The recent announcement of Byleth's inclusion in the roster of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate has taken the Nintendo community by storm and generated a very vocal reaction. In one group, you've got the people who are genuinely excited for Byleth's inclusion. They're excited to see this representative from Fire Emblem Three Houses, a game that they've really enjoyed. And then on the other side, you have the people who are really upset about yet another Fire Emblem representative being in the roster. Now, as somebody who's played Fire Emblem Three Houses and recognizes all the characters from the game and the little references included in the stage and Byleth's moveset and all that, I can definitely say that I'm excited for this character to arrive in the roster. But I understand the perspective of the people who don't feel that way. Yeah man, 8 Fire Emblem characters included in the roster of Smash, that's a lot, especially for a series that's nowhere near as big as Pokemon, which it's now tied in terms of the number of representatives with. But whether or not you're in the camp of supporting Byleth's inclusion in Smash, there's one thing that I don't think most people will try to deny. This character's inclusion is very significant. It's significant in terms of explaining some previous mysteries that we've had concerning Smash DLC reveals, and it's especially significant for the Fire Emblem series going forward, and I'm going to be explaining that within this video. I'm also going to be touching on some other elements of the Smash Bros. Direct that might have gone under the radar, and I'm also going to go over some things I just generally really liked. And with that all being said, let's get started. The first aspect of Byleth's inclusion that I believe is very significant is this explains why Nintendo didn't have a new character reveal at the Game Awards. So if you don't recall, back at the Game Awards 2018, the first character of the Smash Ultimate Fighter Pass was officially revealed. This was Joker from Persona 5. Now, this was just a teaser trailer for the character, but when we rolled around a year later to the Game Awards 2019, and we were still needing the reveal of the 5th and final DLC fighter, with it having a release time frame of before February of 2020, it sort of made sense to conclude the reveals of DLC for this fighter pass at the first place that it started. But as you're probably aware of, the Game Awards 2019 came and gone, and we didn't get this reveal. So we figured Nintendo was saving it for something later, and it obviously turned out to be this Smash Bros. Presentation. But because the character was Byleth, I think this provides us with a little more insight in terms of the why for Nintendo's choice not to reveal it at the Game Awards. A pure teaser trailer for Byleth at the Game Awards, just like we got for Joker, would have probably provided even more of a negative reaction towards the character than we got already. If you think the dislike bombing on the Nintendo trailer for Byleth, the presentation video, and probably this video purely because of the fact that I'm talking about the character was bad, then it would have probably been twice as bad if you were advertising this to a general audience and not specifically a Smash Bros. Audience for people who have either already bought the Fighter's Pass or strongly considering buying the Fighter Pass. If you're gonna go out on a bang with a huge, massive third-party icon as this 5th and final DLC fighter for the Fighter Pass, then yeah, it would make a lot of sense to reveal it at the Game Awards. But when you're revealing a first-party Nintendo character who's from a franchise that many people feel is overrepresented in Super Smash Bros., then it might not be the best idea to reveal it at the Game Awards, and I think that's really where Nintendo's decision came from here. It mostly stems from the fact that when you reveal it in your own presentation like this that was quite lengthy, you get to have the ability for Sakurai to explain reasons for why this character was included, the history of the franchise, why certain aspects of the moveset were chosen, etc, etc. But for a simple teaser trailer, you don't get that. You probably don't even get any gameplay, so many people that just look at the picture of Byleth and don't know anything about the character would just assume that he's a straight up Marth clone, even though he's clearly not. And I can't really blame non-Fire Emblem fans for thinking that from a teaser trailer perspective, but there's no excuse for that now that we've gotten this massive presentation for the character. Yet on social media, I've still seen reaction like that to Byleth from people who just refuse to look at the gameplay of the character and just look at the appearance. This is why his inclusion and announcement right now is so significant, because it explains away that mystery that we've been having over the past month. But let's move on now to some significance surrounding the character itself. And Byleth's inclusion in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate now provides Nintendo fans with a first-party character as DLC. And this is vitally important for Smash Ultimate. Many pure Nintendo fans who don't really engage with communities outside of the Nintendo community and don't play many games other than first-party Nintendo titles probably were more unfamiliar with some of the DLC characters that released, such as Hero, who was mainly popular in Japan, and Sari, who most people probably only found out just because of the inclusion in Smash. But Byleth is a little bit different. Obviously, some people aren't going to know who he is, especially if you don't engage with the Fire Emblem series, but even if you don't really know much about the character, you've probably seen him before somewhere if you're a Nintendo fan at least. You've definitely seen him in advertising, you know of the character, you know of the game the character is from. It was a pretty popular Nintendo title when it released. After all, this character is from the best North American launching Fire Emblem game ever, so it is fairly popular over here, especially compared to some of the third-party characters that were already included in the Fighter Pass. Now, for most fans who bought the Fighter Pass, they're probably okay with the characters who have come out so far, considering that most of them have pretty unique movesets, they were surprising reveals, and they're fairly iconic and important in gaming history. But Byleth serves a very important purpose to satisfy that group of Nintendo fans who aren't as familiar with those third-party characters and mainly engage in first-party material for Nintendo. And now, because of this reveal, they now know that they're getting their representative in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate and a character that they would really enjoy. This proves that the Fighter Pass was not going to be all third-party characters, which means that there's going to be really no theme for the Fighter Passes going forward. We know that this one's not going to be all third-party characters, and then the characters that we get in the future are all not going to be first-party characters. Another significant aspect of Byleth's inclusion is he provides a pretty unique moveset rather than being a standard swordsman. Now hold on for a second before you nitpick my comment about a unique moveset and say, oh, he's just a basic swordsman. I really invite you to go and watch Nintendo's presentation and take a look at the gameplay of Byleth, because he's clearly not a standard swords fighter. He's not a Marth clone, he's not a Roy clone, he's not an Ike clone, he's his own character. Byleth's moveset is really interesting, because before Byleth was revealed, a lot of people didn't want him from Three Houses and would have preferred another representative. I was one of those people who was saying maybe Byleth wouldn't be the best, considering that he's just the protagonist of the game without much personality. Edelgard would have probably been much better is what I thought, but who knew that we were going to be getting Edelgard, Dimitri, and Claude all represented with their primary main weapons in Byleth's moveset. It's effectively incorporating elements from 4 different characters in one, the 3 house leaders as well as Byleth combined into one character. Not to mention that you also get to play as the 3 house leaders in terms of the ults for Byleth. I really enjoy how they incorporated all of these elements here, especially with the bow and arrow being included, because that provides some range, making Byleth vastly different from a character like Marth, who doesn't specialize too much in range gameplay and mainly specializes in melee combat, because after all, he just uses a sword, whereas Byleth has a larger variety of weapons. The newer Fire Emblem characters included in Smash, aside from Echo Fighters, have all provided unique movesets and add a lot to the Smash Bros. Roster. If these characters were to be taken out in some way, I feel there would be something missing in Smash Bros., and Byleth is definitely going to add that extra layer to provide you another character to play who has a lot of aspects to play with and dig around with in his moveset. And another significant aspect of Byleth's inclusion in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is that it serves to further promote the Fire Emblem series by treating it as one of Nintendo's biggest in Smash. I already touched on this, but I'm going to reiterate the point a little bit here. Fire Emblem now has the same amount of representatives as Pokemon in Super Smash Bros. Just think about that for a second. Pokemon is the highest grossing media franchise in the world. It's massive. Some people would even argue that it should have more reps than Mario, considering how big of a series Pokemon is. I'm not one of those people. I think Mario deserves to have the most characters in Smash, considering that Mario is Nintendo's biggest franchise and there are a ton of very unique and interesting characters to draw movesets from for Mario. Pokemon is a similar way. It's a massive franchise. Then you move down, you think the third most popular Nintendo series is probably Zelda, so it would make sense for Zelda to be number 3 here. But no, it's Fire Emblem tied at 2. Now, if you feel really offended by this as a Pokemon fan, that Fire Emblem, a series which has nowhere near the amount of video game sales as you, have the same amount of characters, well, you can take a look at the fact that Fire Emblem does have Echo Fighters and Pokemon doesn't. So technically Pokemon has more original fighters in the game, but they both do have 8 different characters in there, so that does tell you something. What it really tells you is Nintendo's desperately trying to promote the Fire Emblem series by including more and more characters with each new main release of the series here. With Fire Emblem Awakening releasing, it was the last big hope of the Fire Emblem series to make a push and survive. That was it. If Fire Emblem Awakening didn't succeed, the Fire Emblem series as we know it today would cease to exist. But as we know, Fire Emblem Awakening became a massive success, and it was probably helped later on with the inclusions of Lucina and Robin in Super Smash Bros. 4. It probably gave Fates a little bit more notoriety as well when Corrin got revealed for Smash, and so on and so forth. So that's why it really makes sense for Byleth to be included here, because it's obviously going to bring more recognition to Three Houses going forward. Why does Fire Emblem have so many characters is what a lot of people will ask. Maybe they'll now go investigate the Fire Emblem series and examine what these games are. why they're pretty popular now and why they're growing in popularity, and why the series will probably continue to grow and amass more people into its fan base going forward. It's all about creating more promotion for the franchise here. That's really what Super Smash Bros. Is for. It's providing characters with unique movesets to play, making them fun for a party, fighting game, whatever you want to call it. As Sakurai has stated, it's not all about the iconic level of the character, it's whether or not the character is fun to play. But the characters do serve another purpose, and it's to help promote their franchises, because that's really what Smash is. It's collecting Nintendo's biggest franchises together and putting them in this one very popular series so that a lesser popular franchise could slide in there and gain a little bit more notoriety. And because Byleth was included in Smash Ultimate, this is only going to help sales of Fire Emblem Three Houses. This is only going to help improve sales for the DLC that was recently announced for the game, and that's why Byleth's inclusion in Smash Ultimate was very significant. There were some other things that I liked in the Smash Direct that I do want to touch on, such as Cuphead actually being included in the game, which I found very interesting. When Sans got announced that he was being included as a Mii costume for Smash Ultimate, I was really excited. I had no idea that Undertale would get represented at this level, and I especially didn't think that Cuphead would either. There were definitely some people requesting for Cuphead to be included as a fighter, but I don't think it was on a massive scale considering that it's more of an indie game. But Cuphead now is a Mii costume in the game. You can put a Mii costume of Cuphead on your Mii character and you can play around with him, which I think is awesome. If you're not going to make a full-on character for a smaller franchise, a Mii costume is really good just so that they're represented and you let those fans know, hey, we recognize that you wanted this character, we didn't have the time or development resources at this point to include him, but at least he's included in this form, which is really cool. One of the biggest announcements in the Smash Direct is that we're going to be getting 6 more DLC fighters after this, which I found is just insane. I thought we were going to be getting 3 on the low end, 5 at the max, but they're exceeding this. They're going 1 more with this Fighter Pass 2 that they're branding it right now. They're adding 1 on top of it, probably just to make it worth even more to people, because obviously you'd assume that a Fighter Pass 2 would sell less than a Fighter Pass 1, but maybe now adding in this extra character would maybe convince people to go and buy this one a little bit more. I'm going to be focusing more in depth on what 6 characters I think are going to be included in that pass in the future though, considering that I've already focused on Byleth a lot today. We also have until the end of 2021 to get these characters released, so I think we've got enough time to speculate about that. But let me know your early predictions for this in the comment section down below, as well as your thoughts on Byleth's inclusion in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Do you like that he's included, or do you think there's a little too many Fire Emblem characters in the roster? Let me know down below. Also consider subscribing and taking the bell icon so that you don't miss new Smash Bros. Videos on your way very soon, and other Nintendo content as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.